Hi guys and gals, and welcome back to another Board No Game video. Today's video is dedicated to a nightmare guide / advanced Colo tactics. So first things first, before we go over the nightmares, let's go over quick things. Demons, I updated this just like the Tome Demons portion, and we'll talk about more why I updated that. And then the class priority pretty much stays the same. There's nothing that really changes on that part. And then let's talk about the actual nightmares themselves. Now, the nightmares have changed just a little bit because they've added, a couple of gotcha nightmares. So I know it's a little bit difficult, bear with me here. So the debuffing nightmare that got added, Red Rose nullifies library if timed appropriately, right? And the reason why is because Red Rose essentially has the same exact, buff or debuff, you could say, where it lowers both defenses, physical and magical, and it's pretty much the same thing as library. So if someone casts library, they don't switch out in time, you cast Red Rose, you pretty much nullified it. And yeah, it's really cool because Bird technically didn't do it, and now we have something that can counter it. But of course it can be completely avoided if you're fighting, a really pro gamer guild and they can just pretty much dodge debuffs. Some people are good at that. If you cast it during first demon, they can avoid it. But at the same time, I would much rather you cast, Blue Poppy. Blue Poppy is pretty much the premium version of Yorm. Blue Poppy is absolutely amazing during first demon. And the reason being is because Blue Poppy can essentially increase all of your damage, alright? He can increase your DC2, procs, your support boon procs, your tome procs. Pretty much makes your entire unit into Super Saiyan mode, you could say, right? Because increasing all of those Colo aid skills will be quintessential for pretty much downing the opponent or making it so that they cannot buff you or they cannot debuff you, alright? Because it increases, DC2, support boon 2, RS2. You won't be downed essentially with Blue Poppy up because it's a stronger version of Yorm. And I know it's a gotcha nightmare, but we gotta talk about it. Elemental nightmares, I'm skipping over them because nothing's really changed. Cast Freeze Golem, ideally during first demon 2, or you can do it at the tail end of the fight to turn a fight. Freeze Golem's fantastic because Vanguards still have a bunch of blue weapons. Now it does vary with magical, because magical weapons, there's a broader spectrum of elements. But for physical, I know for a fact that Freeze Golem is still good. Lindworm is probably better for magical. I believe there's a bunch of green weapons, alright, for magical. Let's talk about the actual comeback nightmares. We already know who the comeback nightmares are. Blue Poppy, please. Alright. So, the comeback nightmare is Ogre. Alright, we already know how crazy Ogre is. We don't have to talk about it too much. This guy's busted. If you are at the end of the fight and it's an even fight throughout the whole entire match and they Ogre you twice, it's pretty much over. So, or you can pretty much have it so that's an even fight throughout the entire fight. The opponent downs you twice, you down them once with Ogre, and you pretty much turn the fight, alright? Ogre is busted. Especially L. I don't know when they're going to release the gotcha or paid version. It's going to come, but for now, Ogre is by far the most broken nightmare in the entire game. Just stupid good. Alright? Eris, we talked about this. She's not, don't use her. Just don't use her. Learn how to manage your SP. My biggest advice to you is if you are a Vanguard, stay above 250 SP. And if you're about to get a kill, then burn through that 250 SP, alright? If you're a Vanguard, never fall below 250. Only burn the 250 if you're about to get a kill. If you're not going to get a kill, don't burn your extra 250, alright? Always be above 250 as a Vanguard. Elemental, plus or minus nightmare. Biggest thing that got added, UFO. And a lot of you are probably wondering, why would you run UFO? UFO is a very situational nightmare. You only cast it during the beginning of the fight, right? And the reason why is because it is a technical, great supporting nightmare. A lot of minstrels and a lot of sorks on certain, guilds have a lot of red skills or a lot of, fire tomes, fire instruments. For example, Singer's Manuscript is a fantastic tome that goes really well with UFO. So I highly recommend using UFO in the very beginning, and it even helps your Vanguards, right? You do not run UFO if your guild is not active. You do not run UFO if you do not have a lot of members. UFO is only for guilds who pretty much have a bunch of people and they can support that nightmare. I will say that Library, Emilhead, Cecilia, they're much better. Buffing nightmares are much better than UFO if you do not have that many people online, your Colo aid skills, your Colo skills are not up to snuff. then don't run it. These are pretty much like much better nightmares when it comes to a more casual fight, you could say, or a more even fight, where a fight you don't see yourselves like, if you are also gonna get like, if it's like a close fight where you're very even, I highly recommend running the buffing nightmares. Do not run UFO. All right, UFO is like one of these nightmares where your team pretty much has to be in sync and everyone's on board with it, and they're like, yes, we have a bunch of red skills for this moment and we are ready to do it. All right, don't try to use Shadow Lord or something to counter it, because it's not gonna work, because pretty much UFO is meant for supporting, it's not meant for damage. All right, don't worry if you see UFO, that means the enemy team is trying to pretty much buff themselves, so it's not that serious. Okay, next thing is going to be Cake Spider. And before we move to Cake Spider, just note that UFO has a very, very like long like prep time and long duration, so just note that it's not going to be like an easy cast. He's going to throw off your timing if you use UFO, so you're going to have to change like your nightmare order, right? And then Cake Spider. All right, Cake Spider is really huge because this will actually help you with Tome Demon. This nightmare is busted. All right, it pretty much does this: greatly reduce the effectiveness of enemy tome skills. Alright, you already know how that's pretty good with Tome Demon, and I added it in the spreadsheet, right? Because Tome Demon pretty much makes your tome skills hit much harder. With Cake Spider, you can essentially alleviate some of that, overpowered tome buff to keep yourselves within the fight and hold on, right? It's up to you where you want to use Cake Spider. Obviously, it's not a gacha nightmare, and it's going to be a while till we get the gacha version, because the gacha version is like known as like a Diablo or something, and I don't know when that's going to drop. And pretty much like the other version that we get is Werewolf, and this is it still has the better skill. So for the most part, Cake Spider is a must get. He's in the medal exchange right now for the Cake event. I highly recommend picking at least one of him up, maybe MLBing him if you really want to. All I can say is that he can be used outside. He can be used like outside of like, when Tome Demon occurs. You could pop him during a close time where pretty much that the enemy team is like crazy strong and they're just debuffing you to heck. Just pop Cake Spider, you have a break for a minute, everyone goes ham on supports, and you take down the enemy, right? Cake Spider is really good. I can't believe he got added, because he actually changes up the game for Colo. So that's pretty much it for the video. The biggest additions, Red Rose, Blue Poppy, we already know how busted Ogre is, and then Blue Poppy. Stay in your place. Stay in your place, dude. Blue Poppy? Alright. Blue Poppy. Alright. And then, UFO, and then Cake Spider, right? Remember, your UFO only used when your team is active and everyone knows what's going on. Cake Spider, get them, pick them up. Everyone should have at least one copy. Alright. Like, comment, subscribe, follow me on Twitch, follow me on Twitter. And I will see you in the next one.